I say sit down? Yeah. Please sit down. First of all, I just want to bring you greetings and great love from the staff of the Casa Materna in Nicaragua. I know many years ago, Geronima was here with me, and so you know one person anyway. And today, I just want to share with you a little of the hard work that we have at the Casa Materna. Today's scriptures call us to focus on faith, increase our faith. And Paul writes to Timothy, I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that first lived in your grandmothers, in your grandmother Lois, your mother Eunice, and now I am sure lives in you. And let's just take a minute to remember our grandmothers and our mothers who instilled that faith in us and that we carry on. I almost got up there to put my money in the bank. This Thursday, the 10th, would have been my mother Ruth's 103rd birthday. She was born 10/10/10. And I have a good friend, Kate, who was born 10/10. So remembering our grandmothers and our mothers and our grandfathers and fathers who have instilled that in us. I remind you to rekindle this gift of God that is within you. Yes, faith is a gift. And Paul is referring to belief and trust in God. Though we can have faith too in others, in a movement, in our church family, in any variety of things that we are called to do. This, maybe, I don't know, early in the year, a friend sent me a reflection series that, I should remember the name of it, it's from the Presbyterian Church, I think, and maybe some of you use it. But this past week, of course, given the theme of seeds today, that it has been on seeds. And so I begin with the beginning of that reflection. And if anyone wants to receive it, we can send it on to you, right, Elliot? It's a small thing, but a seed contains within it as much potential as anything you might imagine. Each of our lives is small within the context of the universe, but we all contain within us great potential. The seed of faith will germinate into great things wherever it is well tended. Just take a minute to remember the seeds that you planted in springtime and think of all that came from them, all that they produce, vegetables and fruits and flowers. And take time now for the garden that is your life. I know, I'm hoping that everyone who came in received a little prayer card, a prayer for pregnant mothers, and in the corner is a little seed. You can think of it. That's a mustard seed, because the reading today, of course, was about the mustard seed. I told Elia, originally my niece had given me a little packet of seeds, and mustard seeds, and I thought I would pass them out, and everyone can hold the mustard seed while I speak. But when I tried it out with people, inevitably everyone dropped the seed on the floor. So I decided now I don't want people to be scrambling on the floor for the mustard seed. So you get your own little mustard seed, and it will be a reminder as you pray for the pregnant mothers of the Casa. I didn't have my scripture with me when I first started to prepare, so I kind of took the other reading about mustard seed in my head as I developed it. And that's why you have a little different title on the sermon today, or the homily. And then the reading from Matthew says, and this is the one I must have had more as a child, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, a little bigger than a mulberry seed, move from here to there and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. So, think for a moment of the seed that is your life. That little seed, I mean, we all started that way, you know? That's how we started. That's the wonderful thing about working with pregnant mothers. You just remember that over and over. And then think, too, of all the seeds you have planted and helped bring to fruition. A child, a family, a church ministry. It's so beautiful to see your ministry team. A project, a job, a movement perhaps for peace and justice, equality. Just think of all those, how they have come. And today I want to share with you one of the seeds I was blessed to sow with a group of women in Nicaragua in the northern highlands of, in Materna, in the northern highlands of Nicaragua in 1990. The beginning of that seed really happened for me in Ann Arbor, Michigan, when I met with a young woman named Marianne Jackman, which she was Nicaraguan, doesn't sound very Nicaraguan from her name, but she was Jackman Escobar Barrios. And when I met Marianne, she was traveling with a film, I don't think any of you have seen this, maybe Allie and Lou have seen this, called Living at Risk. It was 1985, it was a film that had been made to tell the story of Marianne's husband's family and what had happened for them because of the Contra War. Remember those years in the early 80s. And the film was called Living at Risk. But that day, a sentence in the film, Marianne talks about meeting her husband and her life took another path. And that's what happened for me that day. I didn't know that in Ann Arbor, Michigan in November, whatever it was, early November of 1985. But that day, my life took another path. I was at the time teaching. I know many of you know I taught at Siena Heights College, and I applied for a sabbatical and actually didn't receive the sabbatical because of going to Nicaragua, but I took an educational leave because I knew that that's what I was called to do. And at the end of my time from January to August of 1986, I made a decision to return to Nicaragua, actually to work with Marianne and people who have been displaced because of the Contra War. Many of you know that as I was preparing to return to Nicaragua in January of 1987, I was in Guatemala and received the news that Marianne had been in a serious accident. She was 27 years old and expecting her third child, and she was not expected to live. She had massive head injuries. They tried to keep her alive to see if the baby, who was just 6 months in utero, might be able to survive. But 3 days later, they did a C-section for her. The baby lived a couple of minutes, and Marianne died on the way back to the hospital. So that was like a seed in my life, but an unknown. The seed had been sown that I would return to Nicaragua, and she said, of course you'll come back to work with me. And there I was, walking around Antigua, Guatemala, saying, what is this about? What is that? I went back to Nicaragua and began to meet with the women in a group that had been formed by Marianne in 1986. It was Nicaraguan women and women from all over the world who were trying to look at what was the best way that we might give our energies and support to helping women in Nicaragua. At that time, in our region in Nicaragua, the maternal death rate was huge. The maternal death rate for all of Nicaragua in 1990 was 190 maternal deaths for every 100,000 births. At that time in the United States, just to give a comparison, it was 12 per 100,000 births. Many women felt that the reported rate was maybe half of what it actually was. And in some parts of our region, the rate was something like 375 per 100,000 mothers, because we were a very rural region. So we made a proposal, and this is a group that Marianne formed, that she planted the seed, but then was no longer there. She never knew the Casa Materna, she never really knew the project. But with help from women from Madrid, Spain, we were able to receive a grant in 1990 for the first year of the Casa's work. We didn't have a place to do the work, and so we were looking all around, and then finally someone said, you know, the Cubans who have been working here in our region, the teachers and nurses and doctors, are going to be leaving their consulate. They still have their embassy in Managua, but they have this, a big house actually, and they're looking to sell it. So we went to visit, and they said, well, someone just offered us $100,000 last week for this house, a doctor coming back from Miami, and he wanted it for his private practice and his family. So they said, how much money do you have? So we said, we have $45,000. And they said, we'll take it. We would rather that this house serve the people of Nicaragua than just one doctor and his family and his practice. So as I mentioned, at that time, the maternal death rate was 190 per 100,000. Our focus, of course, would be on mothers who were from rural communities and would need a place to stay, to come to the city to have their births in the hospital. It was actually a model adopted also from Cuba. In the early years, when we started out, we had several hundred women maybe every year, and then, or 1,000, close to 1,000 every year. But in 1995, we entered a time of crisis, and I think maybe I've shared a little bit of that with you, or you know it from the newsletter that I've sent, but you know, the Chinese say that crisis is a time of danger and opportunity. And I think about that, when you think about that in your ministry, you know, you think about, you know, the pastor's leaving, the priest is leaving, like what do we do? It's like kind of a danger, but it also became this great opportunity. And at that time, we had like 1,875 mothers saved, close to 2,000 mothers. And some of the seeds that we plant just never do bear fruit. And the ground is too rocky, or the birds come and eat it, or the weeds choke it. And so at that time, we were like, well, we had confronted some abuse that was there in those who were the chosen leaders of the Casa. And we didn't know what would happen. Actually, some of us were kicked out of the Casa at that time, the workers. And it was the women of the campo, the women of the rural communities who said, you know, it's not your casa and it's not their casa, it's our casa. And we're going to take it back. We're women of the revolution and we know how to do this. And they did it. That's exactly what they did. They took it back. And in the midst of it, they said, trust us. And we did. And so the Casa then, at that time, had close to 2,000 mothers. Today, I know many of you know, we've had over 16,500 mothers. I didn't call Nicaragua today to get the exact number, but it's right around that number. And year by year, the rate of maternal death has decreased. In 2012, the most recent data that we have, the rate of maternal death in all of Nicaragua was 50.6. From 190 reported, it could have been double that, to 50.6. That is huge. And it's because of the support that we've received from people like you, and a lot because of the prayer support. That's why I want to share that card with you. In the Casa itself, if we extrapolated, our rate might be more like 12 per 100,000. We've had 2 maternal deaths with all these high-risk pregnant mothers, 16,500. Nicolasa, who was 36 and gave birth to her, she was 43 and gave birth to her 16th child. Both she and her child survived the birth. About 4 days later, in her home community, Nicolasa died. Could have been a blood clot. We don't know the exact cause. And in 2000, that was in 1996. In 2009, a young 30-year-old mother came to us who had been with us when she was 20. Her name was Susanna. Ironically, both of these mothers had the same last name, but they weren't related, but they were from different communities. Susanna had been told when she gave birth at age 20 that she probably should not have another child. They had a really hard time controlling her hemorrhaging at that time. She was a very devout Catholic, and you know, in Nicaragua, the Roman Catholic Church is very strong. The Episcopal Church is there too, but the Roman Catholic Church is strong. and they have strong censures against any use of family planning other than natural family planning. So 4 years later, in her home community, Susanna had another child. And then the 2 years previous to coming back to the Casa Materna at age 30, she had serious miscarriages, at which time she almost died. So she really fought with her husband and said, no, this time I need to come to the Casa. I think it was like, I think she had a premonition. And after she went to the hospital to give birth, she gave birth, okay, but this time they could not control her bleeding. And I sat with her many hours, it was almost a full day that they were giving transfusion after transfusion, but this time it was not meant to be. And some of the mothers who were in the dorm with her, in the bedroom with her, said one night she had awakened and woke everybody up and said, did you see that green light? And everyone said no, they didn't see the green light. They turned on the light and they were thinking, well, maybe there was a firefly or something, but nothing. And she said, I think it was the green light of death. That she really had this premonition that she was going to die. So I want to take a minute as we reflect on that seed and the fruition of the seed of the Casa Materna to just think about all that you have been in relationship to the Casa Materna through all these many years. Thinking of all the guitars that Thalia sent to Nicaragua through my first years, even before we were at the Casa Materna. All the donations you have sent to us, all the prayers you have sent to heaven on behalf of our mothers. I remember the year that your Christmas cards, that the children, you made one of those Christmas cards. The Christmas cards where the donations went to the Casa Materna. And so all of those wonderful links that you have with us, the way that seed was planted. And I was telling Diane on the way that we're now developing circles of support throughout the country. I really think of you at St. Michael's as a circle of support for the Casa. Last week we brought together women from 7 of these circles to just have a sharing, and it was just so rich and beautiful. And people talking about, well, these are the ways we're sharing education, these are the ways we're helping with fundraising. And so the other thing that's happened for us this year is Thalia's visit. So I'm going to ask Thalia just to share a little bit about her visit. Yeah, is that okay? And then I'll just go sit over here.
Yeah, you stay up there, don't go too far.
Okay. We were going to do a dialogue homily, but we thought you might be here all morning. So we do, however, have a little film to share during the potluck. So.
Yeah, and we know it's a challenge to keep things short, so if she stays here, we will.
Okay.
I knew Kitty before, when she was still here. You know, we were doing sanctuary movements when I was at the church in Adrian. So that's where we first got acquainted, well more than 20 years ago. And every time she was out here, especially the time with Geronima, I've wanted to go to Nicaragua a long time. So the chance to go this summer with Lou was just an incredible gift. One of the things she didn't say, that now there are many Casa Maternas in Nicaragua.
That's right.
And that the maternal death rate in the whole country has been lowered because of this effort. So the seed from St. Michael's and all the places that have supported is amazing. So the efforts, what I consider the small amounts we have given, are part of a much larger whole that have made a huge difference. So each time, this little corner called Cambridge Junction is amazing. We also met there 2 women, one from Spain and one from Ireland, that are part of the circles of support over there. We actually did quite a bit with them, and it's amazing. The other thing is that Kitty is really quite well known in all of Nicaragua. When we got to the next place we stayed for a week, they know her. And Matagalpa knows her. So it was fun to see Kitty in her place there. A couple of things personally for me about this 2 weeks in Nicaragua. I would say there were 4 things. I came home with a sense of well-being that we only get glimpses of a few times in our lifetime. And I had it, and I'm grateful for that. One is that I was amazed at how it took me back to the years in Peace Corps. You've heard a lot about that. There are many things that look the same. The tropical rainforest, but the flame of the forest trees, which is called the malentine tree, was in bloom. And watching the leafcutter ants in the next place for a full block take the red blooms and the green trees and carry them. It was like a Christmas parade going down the streets. And the kids with us were all excited because they found the Casa of the ants. And they were taking these down in. The generosity of spirit is the best word I have. Of the people there was much like Malaysia. And there were things every day that brought me close to tears that were like that. We're a good place to visit, but we do not have this overall generosity of spirit in every place. That people are excited with our excitement, and no matter how many mistakes we make with language, they help us and grin. You don't lose face with anything. We are treated with food, with warmth. We had a great experience like that. A sense of fulfillment when I got back that I feel very fortunate to have. That no matter what happens now, if something happened today, I feel like I've lived very fully. I think it's the beginning of a new phase, but it's a wonderful feeling. The other is that the chance to share with people in new places, and the spiritual part of that is a wholeness that I wish we could all have here all the time. You can't, but it's right in front of us wherever we go. Just a couple things in the next place we went. There's a project we're working with in Incarnation, where I am now, and the pastor there has been to visit Kitty's program in Matagalpa, and they asked me to preach the first Sunday in this new church they're starting in a barrio that needs a lot of help. And he said he wanted me to talk, which I found out from Kitty, on the role of women. And I was overwhelmed by this because I watch women there who carry things on their heads. They work full time. They do everything. It seemed incredibly arrogant of a gringo woman from the U.S. to come down and speak on that. So Kitty helped, along with her staff at Casa Materna, to what could we do with this? And we decided we would speak about the role of women in terms of education, formal and non-formal. And we would use as the example what women at Casa Materna have done. And I think it went fairly well. It was the first weekend this church was open at home. And we talked about whether you have formal education or non-formal education. Here's what these women have done. The staff at Casa are all Nicaraguan.
Yes.
And the teams that go out into the campo now and teach pre- and postnatal health, sanitation, some beginning family planning, and those teams are going out of these other Casa Maternas nationwide. So look what these women have done in Nicaragua. So that the other personal thing that was very fun was my birthday was the second day down. So we did exercises the morning of my birthday with Kitty, breathing exercises with 12 extremely pregnant women, holding their bellies or their backs. Breathe in, she says. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. They're all going to give birth. I'm not. But it was just wonderful. And one little baby was born that day. So we had a fantastic time. And it was wonderful to travel with Lou.
We'll have other things to share too
So-
as we eat.
But St. Mike's needs to take incredible joy and spirit in what you share. And the average income there for a year is $2,000. So imagine what a couple hundred from here does in terms of
Yes.
working with that.
So maybe we'll just take one moment of silence to gather together all of you and your families and the mothers and the staff of the Casa Materna, giving thanks for faith, for that little seed that was sown and has borne so much fruit. From deep within your soul, something beautiful is growing, wild and wonderful, fruitful and free. Yield now to the gentle care of the one who watches over you, tending your soul with great love and infinite confidence. Amen.